Chapter 13. Third-person POV. The serene atmosphere in Rimuru's garden was captivating, a paradise of vibrant color and soft fragrance that seemed to exist outside of time. The gazebo, wrapped in vines and blossoms, floated in the center of the pond, a perfect stage for quiet contemplation. But while the setting remained calm, the storm of emotions from their earlier conversation still lingered. Chloe, sitting beside Rimuru, was visibly trying to calm herself, her breath deepening as she regained composure. Rimuru, on the other hand, sat with the same calm air he always carried, his golden eyes gleaming softly in the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. Ignis and Frigidus stood at a distance, their postures relaxed but alert, casting brief glances around the tranquil garden as if ensuring that nothing disturbed their lord's peace. The breeze carried the scent of flowers, and the gentle hum of nature felt almost therapeutic, bringing a sense of serenity to the moment. Yet, that peace was fleeting. Without warning, the air crackled, magicals swirled at the entrance of the garden, disrupting the stillness like a sudden storm. Pulsating spheres of dark energy appeared, their raw, crackling presence sucking away the calm atmosphere. Ignis and Frigidus immediately snapped to attention, their auras flaring as they instinctively prepared for whatever threat this might be. Rimuru's relaxed demeanor sharpened, though his smile never faltered. His senses flared, detecting the danger immediately. Chloe, however, reacted the fastest. Her expression twisted, a flash of recognition and rage flickering in her eyes as she locked onto the pulsating spheres. She stood abruptly, her aura flaring violently, raw fury radiating off her in waves. "You!" Her voice trembled with barely contained anger. The words felt like venom as they hissed through clenched teeth. She was about to charge, fists glowing with her intent to strike, when Rimuru's hand clasped around her wrist with the perfect balance of strength and care. It was gentle but firm enough to halt her advance. Chloe froze at the touch, her entire body trembling as she struggled against the rage threatening to consume her. "Easy," Rimuru's voice came softly, his tone calm but commanding. His golden eyes locked onto hers, offering her an anchor amid the tempest of her emotions. "There's no need for that, yet." Her breath hitched, but under Rimuru's soothing presence, the fire in her chest slowly cooled. He always had this effect on her, his touch and voice grounding her, even when her emotions were at their peak. She stepped back reluctantly, though her gaze remained fixed on the shadowy figure that had now fully emerged from the spheres of magical energy. The figure was tall, draped in robes so dark they seemed to devour the surrounding light. Its face was hidden beneath a heavy hood, but the faint, eerie glow of two malevolent eyes pierced through the darkness. The air around it was suffocating, bending reality with its oppressive aura. Tendrils of mist crawled along the ground, coiling like serpents, as if the very air was reacting to the presence of an ancient power. Rimuru's expression shifted, but instead of matching the gravity of the situation, his grin widened. It was playful, almost mocking, as he leaned back slightly in his seat, completely unbothered by the ominous energy radiating from the intruder. "Oh, what brings you here?" His voice carried a teasing edge, as if this entire intrusion was no more than an amusing inconvenience. He crossed his arms and gave the figure a casual, taunting look. "You're not lost, are you?" The figure remained silent for a beat, the tension thick enough to feel tangible, like a rope being pulled to its breaking point. Rimuru, however, didn't seem concerned. His demeanor was light, playful, yet there was an undercurrent of dangerous confidence beneath it, one that warned the intruder of the peril in pushing too far. Finally, a low voice emerged from within the hood, calm but heavy with power. "My sole purpose in being here is to alert you, nothing more." "Oh," Rimuru's grin widened even further, his tone still playful but with a sharper edge. "What are you saying, Feldway? To warn me from whom?" The figure, now revealed as Feldway, didn't hesitate. "From cryptids. Some cryptids are moving toward this location." At the mention of the cryptids, Rimuru clicked his tongue in annoyance. "TCH, those mindless bugs. Just how many of them escaped?" His expression darkened slightly, though the irritation was only momentary. Feldway didn't respond. With a silent flicker, he vanished as abruptly as he had appeared, leaving the garden in uneasy silence. Rimuru sighed, rubbing the back of his neck as he leaned back in his seat. "This timeline really is becoming a mess," he thought, his thoughts racing through the tangled web of events yet to unfold. He glanced toward Ignis and Frigidus, who had remained at a respectful distance, following his earlier command for privacy. The two dragons approached now, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Frigidus was the first to speak, his tone crisp but deferential. "My lord, what shall we do now?" Ignis nodded in agreement, waiting for orders. Rimuru took a moment to consider his next move, then glanced at Ignis and Frigidus. Go obliterate them, Rimuru commanded, turning to Ignis and Frigidus. No need to hold back. Both dragons bowed and vanished swiftly, leaving Rimuru and Chloe alone once more. Rimuru leaned back, watching as Chloe's expression shifted between contemplation and lingering anger. Their earlier conversation wasn't finished, and he wasn't about to let it go just yet. You know, he started again, his tone a touch more serious. Rimuru's pav. The garden was as peaceful as ever, but even here, serenity felt fragile like glass teetering on the edge of a fall. My gaze shifted lazily to the horizon where Ignis and Frigidus had vanished, their task clear but the future murkier. Cryptids were becoming more than just nuisances. Each one that slipped through a crack in the fabric of space reminded me that the past wasn't done with us yet. No matter how many seals we placed, how many battles we fought, things continued to leak through, each new disturbance pulling me further into this web of timelines and consequences. A mess I never asked for, but one I couldn't escape. Beside me, Chloe sat quietly, her expression unreadable as she stared at the spot where Feldway had appeared. The fire in her eyes had dimmed, but I could sense the storm still brewing beneath the surface. Confusion, frustration, maybe even a little fear, she was wrestling with all of it. I could feel the weight of her gaze, the unspoken questions pressing against her lips. Questions I wasn't sure I wanted to answer just yet. I didn't mean to keep you in the dark, I began, my voice softer than usual. The playful edge I usually carried was gone. This wasn't the time for jokes, not with Chloe. There's a lot happening behind the scenes. More than you know. I met her eyes, hoping to offer some reassurance, but I saw only concern reflected back at me. She deserved to know, and I couldn't avoid it any longer. You remember Ivarage, right? I continued, shifting my gaze to the tranquil pond as if it could ease the tension between us. The world-destroying dragon, Feldway, Guy, Rudra, Velgrind, Velzard, and I sealed him away, but it's not permanent. It never is. I sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down harder than I cared to admit. Cracks in space, let things slip through. Cryptids, pests, whatever you want to call them. They're hiding in the dimensional gaps, causing havoc. Chloe's eyes widened slightly, her breath catching as she processed what I said. And these cryptids, are they strong? A small laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Strong? Hardly. They're annoying, persistent, and there are too many of them to count. Ignis and Frigidus will take care of them. I kept my tone light, trying to downplay the severity of the situation for her sake. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about cryptids. This was about a much larger problem, one that had roots far deeper than she realized. The silence between us stretched on, thick with unsaid words and growing unease. Chloe was still piecing everything together, but I didn't want her to bear the burden of these endless complications. Not now, not yet. I know it's overwhelming, I said gently, turning back to face her. But let's not dwell on it right now. I've got things under control. I smiled, though it was more for her than for me. The truth was, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep the threads of this tangled mess from unraveling completely. Chloe's gaze softened as she studied me, the worry in her eyes giving way to something else. You're carrying a lot, Rimuru. More than I thought. I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. I chose this path. Besides, if things get too crazy, you're here to keep me in check, right? Her lips quirked into a faint smile, though there was still a shadow of concern lingering in her expression. You and your endless confidence, she muttered, shaking her head lightly. But I could tell she was starting to relax, the tension between us loosening, if only a little. I leaned back, my fingers tracing the edge of the gazebo's railing absent-mindedly. Still, something nagged at the back of my mind. Feldway's warning. Cryptids were manageable, but I knew there were bigger threats lurking, ones I couldn't yet see. Ones I couldn't ignore forever. Pushing the thought aside for now, I shifted the conversation. Chloe, I began slowly, carefully. If you wanted, I could separate you and Hinata. I have the power to do it, you know. Her eyes widened slightly, the confusion and curiosity clear. She hadn't expected that, but after a moment, she shook her head, her resolve steady. No, she said firmly. Not yet, I'll wait for the right time. I respected her decision, though part of me wanted to make things easier for her. She was stronger than most people gave her credit for. I just hoped that when the time came, she wouldn't have to bear the weight of it alone. All right, I said, stretching as I stood. The offer's always there, though. We resumed our conversation, the tension between us easing further, the world outside the garden feeling a little farther away. For now, we could enjoy this moment of peace. But I knew it wouldn't last. It never did. Chloe's paw. The garden was beautiful, too beautiful. The peace here felt almost surreal, like a dream I could wake from at any moment. And maybe that's what it was. A fragile dream. As I sat beside Rimuru, my mind struggled to catch up with everything that had just happened. Cryptids, dimensional gaps, seals, Ivorage. It all swirled together like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite fit. I glanced at him, the man I had known for so long yet still seemed so distant at times. He carried everything so easily, as if the weight of the world was nothing more than a passing inconvenience. But I knew better. There was more going on beneath that calm smile, more than he would ever admit. His voice broke the silence, softer now, less playful than usual. I didn't mean to keep you in the dark, he said, his golden eyes locking onto mine. There's a lot happening behind the scenes, more than I'd like. I searched his face, trying to understand. He was always so confident, so sure of himself. But now, I could see the cracks. The hesitation. He wasn't invincible, no matter how much he pretended to be. When he mentioned Ivorage, my heart skipped a beat. The world-destroying dragon. It wasn't the first time I'd heard his name, but the reality of it hit me all over again. Rimuru had been there, fighting something that could end entire worlds. Sealing him, but only temporarily. And now there were cryptids. Creatures, some sort of magic beast I didn't even know very much about. Creatures that had slipped through cracks in space itself. Are these cryptids strong? I asked, my voice a little more shaky than I'd intended. He chuckled, but it wasn't the carefree sound I was used to. Strong? No, they're more of a nuisance. But they're persistent. Ignis and Frigidus will deal with them. His words were meant to reassure me, but I could still feel the weight behind them. This wasn't just about cryptids. It was about something much bigger. I watched him carefully, the way his shoulders tensed ever so slightly, the way his eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place. He was trying to keep it from me, this constant battle he was fighting. But I wasn't blind. I knew there was more going on. More than he wanted to admit. You're shouldering a lot, Rimuru, I said softly, my heart aching for him. More than I realized. He shrugged, trying to brush it off like it was nothing. I chose this path, he said, leaning back casually. Besides, if things get out of hand, you're here to keep me in check, right? I smiled, despite myself. You and your endless confidence. But even as we joked, the tension lingered. There was something else on his mind. Something he wasn't telling me. When he suddenly mentioned separating me from Hinata, I was caught off guard. Did he really think that was something I wanted? No, I said firmly, meeting his gaze. Not yet. I'll wait for the right time. He nodded, accepting my decision without question. That was one of the things I appreciated about him. He never pushed. He always let me decide for myself. But as we continued talking, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something we weren't ready for. And even though I trusted Rimuru, even though I believed in him, I couldn't help but feel that our fragile peace wouldn't last much longer. Ignis Pav. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a crimson glow over the horizon. The air crackled with tension, but Ignis felt only anticipation. His blood-red eyes scanned the clearing, where the cryptids began to appear, their grotesque forms varying from insect-like creatures to twisted mammals. They were small at first, scurrying or buzzing, but already, he could sense the potential for some to become much larger and more dangerous. Ignis smirked, a flame flickering in his palm. 50, they're not even trying to make this interesting. His gaze flicked to Frigidus, who stood beside him, expression as frosty as ever. I hope you're not planning on letting me handle this all on my own, Ignis teased. Frigidus remained silent, his piercing blue eyes trained on the cryptids. Don't waste your time with taunts. Just focus. Ignis rolled his eyes. Yeah, cold as always. The cryptids started to grow. A fox-like one doubled in size, its fur turning silver as its eyes gleamed with malice. Insects buzzed louder, their wings shimmering ominously. Some cryptids began to grow massive, towering over the rest, their forms bulking up with rippling power. Magic beasts with hunger in their eyes. Time to heat things up, Ignis said, letting his flames burst forth from his hands, transforming into twin whips of fire. Frigidus Pav. Frigidus observed the chaotic transformation of the cryptids without a hint of emotion. Their rapid growth and raw magical energy was impressive, but nothing he couldn't handle. His icy aura intensified as he raised his hand, fingers curling slightly. Frost spread from his feet, a thin layer of ice coating the ground beneath him. "They're spreading out. Take the left flank," Frigidus instructed, his voice calm and calculating. Ignis chuckled. "You and your orders. Fine, I'll leave the boring side to you." Frigidus' eyes narrowed. Without another word, he thrust his hand forward, summoning a barrage of ice shards that shot toward the approaching cryptids. The creatures screeched as the shards impaled them, freezing their limbs before shattering them completely. A swarm of wasp-like cryptids dived toward him, their stingers glowing with venomous energy. Frigidus raised an arm, and a swirling vortex of ice erupted from his body, encasing the creatures in a solid block of frost before they could reach him. Pathetic. Asterisk. But the threat wasn't over. From the far end, a hulking beast, shaped like a massive beetle, its carapace glowing a sickly green, began to charge. Its size dwarfed the others, each stomp shaking the ground. Frigidus raised his hand again, this time forming a massive ice spear. Battle. Ignis and Frigidus vs Cryptids. Ignis darted forward, flames roaring from his hands as he sliced through the smaller cryptids with effortless precision. His fiery whips coiled around a rabbit-like cryptid, its fur igniting in seconds as it shrieked before collapsing into ash. He jumped into the air, spinning mid-leap as he unleashed a fireball that exploded upon impact, incinerating several insectoid creatures in a fiery blast. Flame spiral, Ignis shouted, twirling rapidly as flames spiraled out from his body, creating a vortex of fire that swept across the battlefield. Cryptids screeched as the flames devoured them, their forms burning into nothingness. On the other side, Frigidus faced down the giant beetle, now standing as tall as a mountain. It charged toward him, its glowing green eyes locked on its prey. Frigidus remained still, calculating its movements with a cold gaze. When the beetle came close enough, Frigidus thrust his hand forward, creating a massive ice wall in its path. The beetle slammed into the wall, its momentum halted. Frost rapidly spread across its body as Frigidus stepped forward, his aura intensifying. Ice burst. With a snap of his fingers, the wall of ice exploded, sending sharp icicles flying in all directions. The beetle roared in pain, its legs frozen in place. Frigidus leapt into the air, summoning an ice spear before plunging it into the beetle's back, freezing its entire body in an instant. As he landed, the beetle shattered into thousands of frozen fragments. Meanwhile, Ignis faced a massive fox-like cryptid that had grown far larger than the others. Its fur shimmered silver, and its eyes glowed with intelligence, a sign it was on the verge of becoming a Majin. It bared its fangs, energy crackling in the air as it lunged at him. Ignis grinned, flames flickering in his eyes. Finally, something worth burning. The fox unleashed a blast of energy, but Ignis dodged effortlessly, flames trailing behind him as he circled the beast. He gathered fire in his hand, compressing it into a small orb before hurling it at the fox. Crimson Nova. The orb exploded, engulfing the fox in a fiery inferno. But the beast wasn't done yet. It leapt out of the flames, its body glowing as it prepared to transform into a humanoid form. "Not so fast," Ignis said, his grin widening. Ignis slammed his hand into the ground, sending waves of fire surging toward the fox. The ground beneath the cryptid erupted in flames, consuming it before it could complete its transformation. The fox let out a final, ear-splitting howl before it was reduced to ashes. Frigidus joined Ignis at the center of the battlefield. The ice dragon's gaze swept over the scattered remains of cryptids, his breath calm. "You're too reckless," Frigidus muttered. "And you're too cold, as usual." Ignis smirked, cracking his knuckles. "But it looks like we're done here." Frigidus nodded, but his eyes remained focused on the horizon. For now. Third-person POV. In the soft glow of the late afternoon sun, Chloe stood before Rimuru, her gaze unwavering as she processed everything he had just explained. The past, the future, the inevitability of certain events, they all hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning and weight. But despite the gravity of their conversation, her expression remained calm, even resolute. There was no fear in her eyes, only determination. "So, what will you do now?" Rimuru's voice, though casual, carried an undercurrent of anticipation. He knew what needed to happen, but he also knew that Chloe was no longer the same person she had been in the past timeline. Her choices might diverge from what had once transpired, and the future, as delicate as it was, teetered on the edge of her decision. Chloe took a deep breath, her lips curling into a small, thoughtful smile. "I'll do the same as I did before," she answered quietly, her tone filled with a sense of certainty. "I'll repeat the same actions, follow the same path." But this time, she added, her voice softening, I'll visit you, from time to time. I won't completely disappear. Rimuru smiled at her response, a subtle relief washing over him. I'd like that, he said warmly, his usual playful nature momentarily subdued by the gravity of the moment. Chloe was one of the few people left who had seen him at his most vulnerable, who had been with him through countless loops and battles, and her presence, even intermittent, was a comfort he hadn't realized he longed for until now. Chloe nodded, the weight of her decision settling in. She took a step forward, her eyes searching his for any sign of doubt. When she found none, she wrapped her arms around him in a gentle embrace. Take care of yourself, Rimuru, she whispered against his chest, her voice tinged with emotion. You always do too much. For a brief moment, Rimuru stood frozen, the warmth of her body against his bringing back memories of their shared past, of battles fought and promises made. He returned the hug, holding her just a little tighter than necessary, his own emotions swirling beneath his calm exterior. You too, Chloe, he murmured, his voice barely audible. Stay safe. With one final squeeze, Chloe pulled away, her hand lingering on his arm for just a moment longer before she stepped back. I'll see you soon, she promised, her voice soft but filled with conviction. Then, with a quiet smile, she turned and left, disappearing into the horizon. As the sound of her footsteps faded into the distance, Rimuru remained seated inside the gazebo, his eyes lingering on the spot where Chloe had stood. The garden around him was still, the gentle rustling of the leaves and the distant chirping of birds the only sounds that filled the air. He let out a slow breath, his body relaxing into the chair. Hey, Seal, he whispered, his voice low as if sharing a secret with the wind. Have you discovered anything about that thing or person? A soft rustle beside him signaled Ciel's appearance. Her presence, as always, was both comforting and unwavering. She moved with an effortless grace, her form elegant as she began preparing tea, her movements precise and familiar. No, master, she replied, her tone gentle yet matter of fact. Whoever, or whatever it was has vanished. When we sensed the space distortion, it was as if they never existed. Rimuru frowned slightly, the weight of the unknown pressing against his thoughts. Strange, he mused, his gaze drifting toward the horizon. It's like they slipped between the cracks of reality itself. Indeed, Ciel agreed, her expression calm as she set 2 cups of tea on the table, one for Rimuru and one for herself. She took her seat beside him, her posture poised as she sipped her tea, the delicate china looking almost fragile in her hands. Master, she said after a pause, her eyes glinting with a hint of amusement. You appear to be in quite a good mood today. Rimuru smiled softly, the tension in his shoulders easing. Yes, I am, he admitted, his tone light as he lifted his cup to his lips. The warmth of the tea spread through him, soothing and familiar. Someone who was very important to me in the past came to visit. Ciel's lips curved into a faint smile as she looked at him. That explains it, she said simply, her gaze lingering on him for a moment longer before she returned to her tea. She didn't press him for details she never needed to. Their bond was beyond words, a connection that transcended the need for constant explanation. Rimuru set his cup down, his fingers tracing the delicate rim of the porcelain absent-mindedly. What's your opinion on it? Do you think that whoever we sensed could pose a threat later on? Ciel paused, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. I am uncertain, master, she replied slowly, her voice thoughtful. But we must remain vigilant. The distortion was unlike anything we've encountered before. Rimuru nodded, his mind already turning over possibilities. He trusted Ciel's judgment implicitly, but the unknown always had a way of creeping into his thoughts, no matter how prepared he thought he was. He took another sip of tea, letting the warmth calm his racing mind. And so, time flowed on. Days turned into months, months into years, and years into centuries. The world around Rimuru shifted and changed, but within the heart of the Ravenwood Forest, time seemed to stand still. It had been nearly 22 centuries since Rimuru was born as the 5th true dragon, the Void Dragon, and in that time, the realm he now ruled over, Yggdrasil, had flourished. The Ravenwood Forest, hidden from the eyes of the ordinary, had become a sanctuary. Towering trees with gnarled, ancient trunks and twisting branches loomed over the land, their leaves whispering secrets to those who would listen. A thick, ethereal fog hung low, obscuring the ground and giving the forest an almost mystical quality. Sunlight barely pierced the dense canopy, casting the land in a soft, dreamlike glow. For those who dared to venture into this mysterious forest, legends spoke of creatures of immense power and beauty, beings of myth and magic that no mortal could ever hope to understand. But for those who called it home, the Ravenwood Forest was a paradise, a place where the rules of the outside world no longer applied. Deep within the forest, past the misty paths and ancient trees, lay the capital of Yggdrasil, Ravenhelm. The city was a marvel of natural beauty and craftsmanship, where nature and magic coexisted in perfect harmony. Trees as old as time itself formed the foundations of towering structures, their branches intertwined to form bridges and platforms that stretched high into the sky. Crystalline rivers flowed through the streets, their waters shimmering with the soft glow of magic. Every creature, every species, from the smallest goblin to the mightiest ogre, lived in harmony here, united by a common peace. And inside the Ravenhelm, in a castle, rested the one they all revered, the Void Dragon. When Rimuru was in his dragon form, it was a sight to behold. His scales, dark purple and black as the void itself, shimmered with a faint, otherworldly glow. His golden eyes, deep and endless, held the wisdom of centuries, gazing down upon his realm with a mixture of tenderness and strength. To the creatures of Yggdrasil, he was not just their ruler, he was their protector, their god. His presence alone was enough to keep them safe, and they knew that no threat could ever reach them while the Void Dragon watched over them. But despite his power, Rimuru ruled not with fear, but with compassion. He did not need to assert his dominance through violence or intimidation. His wisdom and kindness were enough to inspire loyalty and devotion from all who lived in Yggdrasil. The people looked to him not just as their leader, but as a figure of hope, a symbol of unity in a world that often seemed fractured and divided. In the heart of the serene garden, Rimuru sat with his most trusted partner, Seal, amidst a scene of peaceful beauty. The soft breeze caressed the vibrant flowers, their petals swaying in rhythm with the gentle rustling of leaves. The tranquil moment between them stood in stark contrast to the lively energy that permeated the vast expanse of Yggdrasil, the world they had built together from nothing. As they sipped their tea in companionable silence, Rimuru's gaze wandered over the garden, taking in the delicate blooms, the trickling fountain, and the serene sky above. His mind, however, lingered on the being beside him, the consciousness who had guided him through countless trials. Seal was more than just a partner. She was an extension of him, the ever-present voice of wisdom and calm that had shaped his journey. Her presence was both a comfort and a reminder of how far he had come. The distant sounds of laughter and bustling life from the city below reached them, carrying with it the essence of the vibrant civilization they had nurtured. Each cheer and shout was a testament to their shared vision, a world where people of all races and creeds could coexist in harmony. Rimuru allowed himself a rare moment of reflection, feeling the weight of his past decisions lift in the tranquility of the present. Ciel's serene expression mirrored his own thoughts, her soft smile communicating volumes without a word. The connection between them went beyond the physical, it was the bond of creators who had weathered the storms of fate together, hand in hand. In this moment, surrounded by the beauty of the garden and the echoes of life they had fostered, the world felt complete, as if no words were necessary to express the deep gratitude they felt for one another. But the peace of the moment was soon interrupted by a familiar, playful energy that crackled through the air. Rimuru, a voice, bright and full of excitement, rang out through the garden as a figure rushed toward them. Milam Nava, the dragon princess and daughter of Veldanava, bounded into view, her vibrant pink hair bouncing with every step. She was dressed in her usual attire, a sleeveless white blouse with a lavender bow at the chest, a short pleated skirt, and her signature high twin pigtails tied with blue ribbons. Rimuru smiled, setting his teacup down just in time to dodge the enthusiastic tackle Milam had aimed at him. "Hey, Milam," he greeted her, his voice light with amusement. "Here for another spar, I take it." Milam grinned, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Of course, it's been too long since we've had a proper match." Rimuru chuckled, rising from his seat as he stretched casually. "All right then, but don't get mad when I win again." Milam pouted, though the glint in her eyes betrayed her eagerness. "This time, I'll get you for sure," she declared, her voice filled with determination. She stomped her foot lightly, sending a small shockwave through the ground that rustled the leaves in the surrounding trees. The playful pout didn't last long before her lips twisted into a confident grin, her eyes narrowing with excitement. She may have lost round one, but Milam Nava, dragon princess and daughter of Veldanava, wasn't the type to back down from a challenge, especially when it came from someone she admired so much. Rimuru, still leaning back on his heels with a relaxed smile, raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Show me what you've got." His words were casual, teasing even, but the glimmer in his eyes showed that he was more than a little curious to see what she would pull out next. After all, as one of the strongest beings in existence, Milam was always full of surprises. Milam's energy flared, a brilliant light surrounding her as she tapped into more of her immense power. Her twin pigtails danced in the wind as her aura grew, swirling around her like a vibrant storm. The earth beneath her feet trembled, tiny cracks forming in the ground as the sheer pressure of her energy built up. She wasn't holding back anymore, even if this was a friendly spar. There was no room for half measures when it came to proving herself to her uncle, the Void Dragon. Rimuru, sensing the shift in her resolve, straightened up, though his smile never wavered. "All right, Milam, let's see if you can make me break a sweat this time." His tone was still light, but there was a subtle change in his posture, a readiness, a preparation for what was to come. Without warning, Milam shot forward, her speed almost blinding as she closed the gap between them in an instant. Her fist, glowing with raw, untamed power, shot toward Rimuru's face with enough force to split the air itself. But just as the strike was about to land, Rimuru shifted, his body moving with such fluidity that it seemed as though he'd never been in the path of the attack at all. Milam's fist collided with empty air, the force of her punch sending a shockwave rippling through the field, uprooting small trees and scattering leaves like a storm. But Rimuru was already behind her, his hand lightly tapping her shoulder before he darted away, his laughter echoing in the wind. "You're fast, but you've got to be faster than that if you want to hit me," Rimuru teased, his form now several meters away from her, standing casually with his hands in his pockets. He didn't even look like he was trying. Milam spun around, her eyes gleaming with competitive fire. "Oh, don't worry, I've got more than just speed." With a fierce roar, she unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one crackling with destructive power as they raced toward Rimuru. The sky above seemed to darken as the air sizzled with the intensity of her attack. Rimuru's grin widened, his eyes flickering with excitement. He raised his hand, and with a simple flick of his wrist, the blasts were swallowed into a void of swirling darkness, disappearing without a trace. The effortless nature of his counter only fueled Milam's determination. She wasn't done yet. With a burst of energy, she launched herself into the sky, her body glowing with radiant light as she charged up her next attack. Rimuru followed her movements with an amused expression, knowing full well what was coming next. Milam's voice rang out, filled with both power and excitement. "Let's see how you handle this, Rimuru." She extended her hand, and from it, a massive sphere of energy began to form, glowing brighter and brighter until it was nearly blinding. The sheer size of the attack was immense, casting a shadow over the entire clearing as she prepared to unleash it. Rimuru, still calm, watched her with a mixture of admiration and amusement. He knew this was one of her signature moves, Dragon Nova *, an attack capable of leveling mountains and scorching the earth. But he wasn't worried, far from it, actually. He was proud to see Milam pushing herself, proud to see her fighting with such passion. The massive sphere of energy reached its peak, pulsating with untold power as Milam prepared to throw it. Her grin widened, knowing that even Rimuru would have to take this seriously. With a powerful shout, she hurled the Dragon Nova toward him, the air around it warping from the sheer force of the attack. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down as the gigantic blast hurtled toward Rimuru. The ground quaked, the air crackled, and the sky itself seemed to ripple under the pressure of the energy. Milam watched, anticipations coursing through her veins, waiting to see how her uncle would respond. Rimuru didn't move. Instead, he simply raised his hand, palm open, and in the blink of an eye, a swirling vortex of void energy appeared in front of him. The black, inky mass seemed to swallow all light around it, a perfect representation of his status as the Void Dragon. As the Dragon Nova collided with the vortex, the immense energy was absorbed effortlessly, vanishing into the darkness like a stone sinking into water. Milam's eyes widened in shock, her breath catching in her throat. Even though she had expected Rimuru to counter her attack, she hadn't expected him to do it so effortlessly. The energy she had poured into that attack, enough to level a city, had been erased as if it had never existed. "Nice try, Milam," Rimuru said with a wink, lowering his hand. "But you'll have to do better than that if you want to beat me." Milam's surprise quickly melted into laughter, the sound bright and carefree. She floated down from the sky, landing lightly in front of Rimuru, her hands on her hips. "You're impossible," she exclaimed, her voice filled with both frustration and admiration. "I threw everything I had at you." Rimuru chuckled, reaching out to ruffle her hair. "You're strong, Milam, don't ever doubt that, but remember, I've been at this a bit longer than you." His tone was gentle, filled with warmth and pride. Milam pouted again, though her expression softened as she looked up at her uncle. Yeah, one of these days, I'm going to catch you off guard." I look forward to it, Rimuru replied with a smile. They both stood there for a moment, the tension from the spar evaporating as a gentle breeze swept through the clearing. The playful energy between them lingered, but now it was filled with a sense of camaraderie, a bond between family that went beyond mere strength. Milam, still buzzing with leftover excitement from the fight, glanced up at the sky, her eyes sparkling with the possibilities of future battles. You know, she said thoughtfully, I don't really care about winning or losing against you. I just like fighting with you. Rimuru smiled softly at her words, feeling a surge of affection for the dragon princess. Same here, it's not about the outcome. It's about enjoying the moment. He gazed up at the sky as well, a serene expression on his face. We're family. That's what matters. Milam nodded, her smile wide and genuine. Yeah, family. They stood together in comfortable silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. Despite the immense power each of them held, in this moment, they were simply two beings enjoying the simple joy of being with each other, neither ruler nor dragon, but uncle and niece. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the land, Milam turned to Rimuru, her voice quieter now, but filled with sincerity. Thanks for the spar, Rimuru. I needed that. Rimuru smiled down at Milam, his heart full of warmth. Anytime, Milam, anytime, he reassured her softly. As the battle ended, the two of them strolled through the garden toward the table and chairs that had been set up earlier. The setting was serene, with flowers in full bloom, their vibrant colors bathing the area in life. On the table, a variety of snacks and cakes were spread out, Seal having prepared them before Milam's arrival. Rimuru noted that Seal had quietly vanished the moment Milam arrived, retreating into his soul as she often did in moments like this. They sat down, Milam eagerly reaching for the cakes while Rimuru sank into the comfortable chair with a sigh, the tension leaving his body. He closed his eyes, leaning back to enjoy the cool breeze that rustled the garden leaves. The peaceful sound of Milam happily munching on her snacks and cakes brought a small smile to his lips. He let his mind wander, diving deep into the sea of memories that stretched over the past 1700 years, countless events and changes flashing in his thoughts. Rimuru's Pav. Has it really been that long since Veldanava died, since Chloe first appeared in my life? 1,700 years. Has it really been that long? I sighed inwardly, the weight of those years settling heavily in my chest as I leaned back into the chair. It felt as though an entire eternity had passed since Veldanava's death, since the world had been irrevocably altered by his absence. So much had changed: humans, monsters, even the very land itself. The rise and fall of nations had become a rhythm I had grown used to, like the turning of the seasons. They appeared, clawing their way to power, and then inevitably crumbled, their ruins lost to time, their ambitions washed away by the tide of history. One of the greatest reasons for their vigilance is the Great Tenma War. The Great Tenma War is an event occurring every 500 years since the beginning of the game between Guy and Rudra. Rudra uses his ultimate skill, Michael's Armageddon, to summon an army of angels to ravage the central world and attack all countries with overly advanced technology. This is meant to prevent humanity from destroying itself by progressing too far. Nevertheless, there are additional factors that have contributed to the increased strength of humans, of course. They had to. With beings like Veldora roaming the world unchecked, they had no choice but to adapt. Fear was their greatest motivator. Fear of monsters, of demons, of true dragons like my idiot brother, who delighted in causing chaos simply because he could. Veldora had never understood restraint. He thrived on destruction, relishing the way entire civilizations trembled before him. Only a handful of us could rein him in, true dragons like myself, or the founding members of the Demon Lord Council. Even then, it was never easy. Veldora. A small smile tugged at the corner of my lips. He was a troublemaker, a force of nature whose recklessness seemed to know no bounds. But even in his worst moments, he was still my brother. I couldn't stay angry at him for long. We shared a bond, not just of blood but of shared mischief and camaraderie, stretching back through the centuries. After Veldanava's death, I had offered Milam a place with me, thinking it might help her cope with the unbearable weight of loss. She had declined. Her spirit, ever so fierce, demanded that she face the world on her own terms. She wanted to take responsibility for her actions, for the destruction she had wrought. I had admired her for that. Even though she was hurting deeply, profoundly, she never let it show. She had always been so strong. But I knew the truth. I had seen the sadness that lingered behind her carefree smiles, the way her eyes clouded over when she thought no one was watching. I tried to help her, in my own way. She threw herself into helping others, slaying monsters, fighting off magical beasts, and mediating conflicts between nations. She wanted to atone for what she had done, for the death and destruction she had caused in her rage after Veldanova's death. I admired her determination. She even discovered the Dragonutes, those demi-humans born from the union of humans and dragons, created from Gaia's essence. They had become her new family, and together, they had built the city of the Forgotten Dragon. It was her way of starting anew, of creating something that could heal the wounds she had inflicted on the world. But as the centuries passed, I could see it weighing on her. The spark that once defined her had begun to dim. She grew tired, disillusioned. The world, once so full of possibilities, had become a place of endless repetition for her. Nations rose and fell, wars were fought, people died, it all blurred together. She no longer found joy in her battles. Instead, she sought something more dangerous, a thrill, a challenge. That was why she sponsored new candidates for the Demon Lord Council, hoping that one of them would be strong enough to entertain her, to reignite the fire that had all but gone out. But no matter how far she drifted from the world, she never drifted away from me. She always came back, always found her way to my side. The bond we had was unbreakable. We were more than just uncle and niece now. We were like siblings, two kindred spirits who had seen too much of the world, who carried the weight of too many memories. I cared for her deeply, more than I could ever truly express. I found myself chuckling at the thought of all the times I had scolded her over her clothing. She had been reckless and unbothered by such trivial matters, running around half-dressed, completely unconcerned. And yes, I still nag her about her clothes. Someone has to make sure she's dressed properly. I can't let her run around in those half-baked outfits she used to wear. But as much as I cared for her, my thoughts inevitably drifted to the darker moments of the past. The Night Rose Castle, that memory still stung. It had been one of the most disastrous incidents in recent history, and of course, it had been caused by Veldora. Luminos Valentine, the vampire queen, had held the castle as a symbol of her nation's power, an impregnable fortress of strength. But Veldora, in one of his careless rampages, had destroyed it in an instant. He hadn't even meant to. He had just wandered too close, gotten bored, and chaos had followed. Luminos had been furious. She had every right to be. The destruction of the castle had left her forces in disarray, throwing her entire nation into chaos. But what could she do? True dragons were beyond even someone like her. No matter how powerful Luminos was, she couldn't hope to match the destructive might of a being like Veldora. It was absurd, really. Veldora hadn't even been trying, and yet he had reduced an entire stronghold to rubble. The aftermath of Veldora's rampage left Luminos's forces in shambles. It's no wonder she harbors a grudge. But Veldora, he barely even remembers the incident in her name. He's chaos incarnate, always destabilizing everything around him. It's fortunate that Chloe managed to seal him when she did, or who knows how much more damage he would have caused. Their fight had been something, though Veldora could have held his own, but he got distracted by Chloe's beauty. He caught a glimpse of her face behind her mask and lost focus. That idiot. Still, I should visit him soon. He must be bored. Maybe I'll bring him some more manga when I go. And honestly, it's for the best. My thoughts drifted again, this time to Velgrind. Our relationship has changed over the years, evolving from one of animosity to something much more respectful. She had apologized after our first encounter, realizing that she had misjudged me. Since then, we have grown closer. There was a certain understanding between us now, a shared respect. She still had her fiery temper, of course, but I had come to appreciate it. She was passionate, determined, and when she cared about something, she cared deeply. I admired that about her. Velzard, though, Velzard was a different story. Cold, distant, terrifying in her own right. Every time we crossed paths, I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. There was something about her, an icy, unyielding presence that demanded respect and instilled fear in anyone who dared cross her. Even I had to tread carefully around her. If Velgrind was fire, then Velzard was ice, unforgiving, relentless. And her anger, I didn't even want to think about it. She doesn't tolerate disrespect. I had only seen her truly angry once, and that was enough to make me swear I'd never be the one to provoke her. Well, let's just say I'd rather not provoke her. Velgrind gets mad, sure, but Velzard, she's a whole different level of scary. As my mind wandered, I found myself thinking of Chloe. She, too, had become a mystery to me. Sometimes she visits once or twice a year. Sometimes decades passed without a word. But it had been nearly a century since I last saw her, and I couldn't help but wonder why. What had kept her away for so long? Yggdrasil, the country I built, is thriving. Monsters weak and strong alike seek refuge in the safety of its borders. I welcome them. It's a peaceful place, but make no mistake, it's powerful. Ignis, Frigidus, and the other two dragon lords I named Demiurge, the Earth Dragon Lord, and Albedo, the Water Dragon Lord, are its guardians. Together, they ensure the country's safety. We've even got some ogres from the Jura forest. They were part of that clan that perished in the orc invasion in another timeline, but here, they have a new life. I was lost in thought when I felt a familiar presence entering the garden. My senses snapped back, and I turned toward the gate. There, stepping into the garden, was a girl wearing a mask, her steps light and deliberate. Chloe, I muttered under my breath. Milam, oblivious to the growing tension in the air, continued munching on her cakes. I, though, felt my heart race. Rimuru. Milam blinked, her voice dropping with concern as she picked up on the sudden change in my expression. Her sharp senses hadn't missed it either. She followed my gaze, turning toward the entrance. Milam fidgeted uncomfortably next to me, her relaxed demeanor disappeared, replaced by careful interest. Relax, Milam, I said, standing up with a calm smile. She's not a foe. Chloe, upon seeing me, removed her mask and rushed toward me, wrapping her arms around me in a tight embrace. She buried her face in my chest without a word, her grip firm and unyielding. Milam's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed into a sharp glare. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Get away from Uncle, she demanded, pointing an accusatory finger at Chloe. Chloe ignored her, tightening her hold on me, her breath steady as if finding solace in my presence. Not one to be left out, Milam quickly latched onto my other side, pressing herself against me with a huff. You, Milam grumbled under her breath, glaring daggers at Chloe. I sighed, exasperated by their childishness, though I couldn't help the smile tugging at my lips. Gently, I pried them apart, stepping back and clearing my throat. Third person Pav. As the warmth of the hug faded, Rimuru gently stepped back, releasing both Milam and Chloe from his embrace. The brief moment of peace between them dissolved into a subtle tension that lingered in the air. Milam's arms crossed over her chest, her expression a mix of irritation and suspicion as her eyes remained fixed on Chloe. Her carefree and cheerful demeanor seemed replaced by something guarded, territorial even. Chloe, however, remained poised, calm, though a small, amused smile tugged at her lips, as if fully aware of the scrutiny she was under. Rimuru, noticing the silent exchange between them, stepped forward with an easygoing smile, hoping to dispel the brewing storm. All right, he said, breaking the silence, let's take a seat. He gestured toward the table they had gathered around before, his voice casual yet commanding, hinting at the balance he often had to maintain between those he cared for. We've got a lot to catch up on. The trio moved to the table, Rimuru purposefully sitting in the middle, flanked by Milam on one side and Chloe on the other. It wasn't lost on him that placing himself between the two was a necessity. As soon as they settled, Milam's patience waned, her curiosity burning brighter than the tension between them. She leaned forward, her intense gaze locking onto Chloe. So, who exactly are you? Milam asked, her voice carrying a mix of challenge and curiosity. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she could uncover the truth by sheer willpower. Chloe met Milam's scrutinizing stare with a calm smile, soft yet disarming. I'm Chloe Obel, she said, her voice even, betraying no unease. The hero. Her gaze flickered briefly to Rimuru before returning to Milam. A friend of Rimuru's. At the mention of hero, Milam stiffened. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and she shot a quick glance at Rimuru, searching for answers. She'd heard tales of the hero's legendary beings who had stood against demon lords, who had fought and vanquished the most powerful foes, including dragons like her uncle Veldora. The fact that one sat across from her, casually calling herself Rimuru's friend, didn't sit well. Was she here as a threat? Before Milam's thoughts spiraled further, Rimuru gently placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch radiating warmth and reassurance. His voice, soft and familiar, cut through her turmoil. Relax, Milam, Chloe's not an enemy, she's a friend. Milam's gaze darted from Rimuru to Chloe, her posture tense and uneasy. It wasn't in her nature to simply trust someone who could be a potential rival. But Rimuru's calmness, his unwavering trust in Chloe, made her pause. Slowly, she exhaled, though her wariness lingered in her narrowed eyes. If you say so, she muttered, crossing her arms tighter as if guarding herself from whatever truth might unfold. Chloe, noticing Milam's tension, softened her smile further, showing a rare glimpse of understanding. I get it, she said gently. Your caution makes sense. But I'm not here to fight or challenge you, Milam. Her gaze shifted toward Rimuru, her voice taking on a warmer, more nostalgic tone. Rimuru and I have been through a lot together. We've fought side by side against some of the toughest enemies imaginable. Milam's skepticism remained, though her aggressive edge had dulled. You better not try anything funny, she muttered, though the fire behind her words had dimmed to a simmer. It was clear she wouldn't easily drop her guard. Rimuru chuckled softly at Milam's protectiveness, appreciating the way she looked out for him in her own unique way. Chloe's been a close friend for centuries now, Milam, he reassured her with a smile. If there's anyone you don't need to worry about, it's her. Milam huffed, reluctantly easing her posture, though the tension between the two women remained palpable. Yet, the conversation soon shifted as Chloe began recounting the tale of her battle with Veldora, the Night Rose Castle, and the devastation that followed. Chloe's battle at Night Rose Castle. The once pristine Night Rose Castle stood tall against the darkened sky, its towering walls gleaming with the light of moonbeams. The castle had been a symbol of elegance, power, and strength for centuries until that fateful day. Veldora, in his immense dragon form, towered over the castle like a living storm, his eyes glowing with untamed fury. His roar reverberated through the night, sending shockwaves that shattered windows and cracked the once impenetrable walls of the castle. I didn't want to fight him, Chloe began, her voice quiet yet carrying the weight of the memory. But Veldora was relentless, consumed by his rage. Her eyes darkened slightly as she recalled the moments leading up to their battle. He had been provoked, manipulated into unleashing his full power, and there was no stopping him. Veldora's attacks were cataclysmic lightning storms, bursts of wind, torrents of pure energy that obliterated everything in their path. Chloe had fought back with all she had, her blade glowing with the light of her hero's power, but every blow was met with the ferocity of a dragon who knew no restraint. We clashed over and over, she continued, her gaze far away as she remembered the feeling of her sword against Veldora's scales, the power of each strike threatening to overwhelm her. But the more I fought, the more I realized. I couldn't win by sheer strength alone. The battle was fierce and destructive. Veldora unleashed his fearsome dragon breath, causing massive storms and destruction across the battlefield, but Chloe stood her ground. Using her skillful swordsmanship and incredible agility, she managed to deflect Veldora's attacks, and with each clash, the two titans pushed each other to their limits. The key turning point came when Chloe activated her unique heroic powers, her ultimate skill Yog-Sothoth, god of the space-time, granting her access to her extraordinary abilities, including time-related skills. With these powers, Chloe was able to seal Veldora in an eternal prison, the infinite prison, which was one of the strongest sealing techniques in existence. Despite his immense power, Veldora was caught off guard and trapped within this prison, putting an end to his rampage. The destruction of Night Rose Castle was inevitable. The castle crumbled as Veldora's power was sealed away, its once magnificent halls reduced to rubble. The aftermath was devastating. Luminous and I handled the consequences, Chloe said, her voice softer now. But the damage, it was irreversible. Entire regions were affected. And Veldora, well, he is sealed inside the cave located in Jura Forest. Rimuru listened intently, his expression growing more serious as Chloe's tale unfolded. He could feel the weight of her words, the decisions she had made, the battles she had fought, all for the sake of protecting others. He couldn't help but admire her strength, even if it came at a great personal cost. As their conversation drifted into other topics, old battles, shared memories, and lingering questions about the future, Chloe's expression lightened. She leaned toward Rimuru, a playful glint in her eyes. You know, she said, her voice teasing, we could always go on an adventure together. Just the two of us. Explore the world as normal adventurers. Rimuru blinked, slightly taken aback by the sudden suggestion. An adventure, he echoed. Chloe nodded enthusiastically. Why not? You've been cooped up here long enough, haven't you? Let's just go, explore the world, see what's out there beyond the borders of these lands. Rimuru hesitated. The idea was tempting, especially with Chloe's excitement shining through her words. But his responsibilities, his position, weighed heavily on him. I don't know if. Come on, Chloe interrupted, her voice growing more insistent, though still playful. We've both been through so much. Don't you think we deserve a little break? Just the two of us, no titles, no expectations, just adventurers, free to do whatever we want. Rimuru glanced at her, then at Milam, who was now watching the exchange with growing suspicion. Chloe's suggestion was tempting, more so than he wanted to admit. After a few more moments of persuasion, Rimuru finally sighed, a smile tugging at his lips. All right, you win. I'll go on this adventure with you. Milam, however, wasn't about to be left out. I'm coming too, she declared, standing up with a determined gleam in her eyes. Rimuru laughed lightly, shaking his head. Sorry, Milam, if you came along, I'm pretty sure chaos would follow. This is one trip I need to keep quiet. Milam pouted, crossing her arms again, clearly upset by the rejection. But I won't cause any trouble. I'll be good, she insisted. Rimuru smiled, patting her head. How about this? If you behave while I'm gone, I'll bring you back a special gift. Deal. Milam's eyes sparkled at the mention of a gift, and though she still looked displeased, she reluctantly agreed. Fine, but it better be a good gift. With that, Rimuru and Chloe prepared to set off on their new adventure, leaving behind the tensions of the past and the responsibilities of the present for now, at least. Back in time, Rimuru's meeting with Demiurge and Albedo. As Rimuru wandered through the dense, ancient forest surrounding God's Mountain, he felt an unfamiliar yet immense presence, vast, grounded, and ancient. There was power in the air, though it lacked the ferocity of dragons like Veldora. Instead, it was a quiet, deep force that resonated with the very earth beneath his feet. Following the pulse of energy, Rimuru soon found himself standing before a colossal dragon whose massive form seemed to blend into the earth itself. Bronze-like scales covered its body, shimmering with a deep glow. Rimuru felt no threat, only an aura of timeless wisdom and restraint. The Earth Dragon, Rimuru murmured, taking a step forward. The creature opened its ancient eyes, locking its gaze on Rimuru. The dragon's aura, though powerful, was calm, deeply rooted in the nature around him. For days, Rimuru conversed with the Earth Dragon, intrigued by his perspective on power, peace, and balance. The Earth Dragon spoke of stability, a guardian of nature who acted only when the world's equilibrium was threatened. Over time, Rimuru came to see the dragon's ideals as a perfect fit for Yggdrasil, the nation he had built to be a sanctuary of peace and balance. Rimuru knew that this wasn't a dragon that could be convinced through simple words or displays of power. Instead, it required something deeper, a bond of trust and mutual respect. Over the course of several years, Rimuru returned time and again, discussing, learning, and proving himself as more than just a ruler. Finally, when Rimuru felt the time was right, he extended an offer to the Earth Dragon. I want you to join me, Rimuru said. Not simply as an ally, but as my subordinate. I believe that together, we can protect Yggdrasil and the balance of nature itself. The Earth Dragon was silent, his gaze intense but thoughtful. After a long pause, he responded, his deep voice vibrating through the ground. Subordinate, I have guarded this earth for centuries, untethered by rulers or lords. Rimuru nodded, understanding the weight of his offer. I don't wish to change who you are. But I do wish for you to be part of something greater, and for you to trust me. I offer you a name, a proof of our bond, and a symbol of our unity. With it, you will become more than you are now. The Earth Dragon's eyes narrowed, considering Rimuru's words. In the world of monsters, a name was a powerful thing, a symbol of loyalty, of purpose. Finally, the dragon lowered his head slightly, a gesture of acceptance. Rimuru stepped forward, his hand raised. From this day forward, you shall be known as Demiurge. As the name left Rimuru's lips, an intense wave of magic surged through the air, wrapping around the Earth Dragon like a cocoon of energy. The dragon's massive form began to shift, contorting and shrinking as it transformed. When the magic faded, standing before Rimuru was no longer the massive Earth Dragon, but a tall, imposing figure of a man Demiurge. His human form was immense, twice the size of Rimuru, with sharp, angular features and dark, calculating eyes that radiated both power and wisdom. Demiurge, the man said, testing the name, his voice deep and resonant. Though transformed, his aura of quiet strength and stability remained unchanged. Rimuru's journey did not end there. Not long after his encounter with Demiurge, he ventured deeper into the forest, where he felt another presence, this one flowing like a calm, steady river. It was near a crystal-clear stream that he found her, the Water Dragon Lord. Her form was elegant, fluid, her scales shimmering like the purest water. She exuded a serene power, as still and deep as the lake from which she emerged. Rimuru approached carefully, sensing that this dragon, like Demiurge, was a creature of peace, but there was a sharpness in her gaze, a keen intellect that set her apart. Their conversations mirrored those with the Earth Dragon, though this dragon had a strategic mind. Rimuru found himself fascinated by her calm, calculating demeanor. She had no interest in grand displays of power or dominance, instead preferring quiet control, her influence flowing beneath the surface like the currents of a river. After long years of patient conversations, Rimuru finally made the same offer he had made to the Earth Dragon. I ask you to join me, as my subordinate, to help protect Yggdrasil. The Water Dragon Lord regarded him with cool eyes, her thoughts hidden behind her calm facade. Finally, Rimuru stepped forward, offering her the same symbol of trust he had given Demiurge. I will give you a name, he said, as a sign of our bond. With it, you will gain a new purpose. The Water Dragon Lord watched him for a long moment before slowly nodding her head in acceptance. With a quiet but powerful voice, Rimuru spoke her new name. From this moment, you shall be called Albedo. Just as before, a powerful surge of magic filled the air, surrounding the Water Dragon Lord. Her form began to shift, the water-like currents of her body reshaping themselves into a tall, elegant woman. Albedo stood before Rimuru, her new human form as graceful and fluid as the river she had emerged from. Her long hair flowed like a waterfall down her back, and her sharp eyes gleamed with the same intellect as before. Now, with Demiurge and Albedo by his side, Rimuru had gathered two powerful allies. Along with Ignis and Frigidus, the four dragon lords formed an unbreakable force that stood as guardians of Yggdrasil. Naming them was more than just a show of authority, it was a sign of the deep trust they had built over the years. It was a bond that transcended power, rooted in mutual respect and a shared vision for the world they sought to protect. To be continued.